Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Peter Simonsen. I am a cyber insurance broker with Gallagher Risk Management Solutions. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. I'm very pleased to be here. Amanda Williams invited me, and so really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to you guys today about responding to cyber incidents in higher education. So, a couple warnings before we get started. The first is, unfortunately, this is going to be interactive, provided my technology works today. So if you want to escape now, go for it. The second is you're all being promoted to CISO of your respective institutions. So as we go through this, just pretend you're your boss or your boss's boss, and then we'll go from there. Okay. I'm going to identify the objectives in the scenario that we're going to work through today. We're going to do a brief group tabletop exercise. How many guys of you have done like a tabletop exercise with your organization? Okay, great. So the one that we're going to do here today is really just focused on that initial incident response. So how do we get out of the gate and respond to a cyber incident, and what are the tools and things that we need to do to make sure that we start off on the right path to mitigate the incident as much as possible. We'll go over some key takeaways and then have any questions. But as we go through, feel free to ask questions as we go. Again, I'd like this to be as interactive as possible. So a little bit about me. I am a cyber insurance broker. I live in Kansas City. Cyber insurance broker. My 5-year-old says I talk into my computer for money in my basement. But what that really means is I work with higher education institutions across the country, and I work with them on complex cyber risk management. A lot of what we do is not only proactive cyber risk management, but we also place their cyber insurance policy. When I work with my clients, I work for them. I don't work for the insurance company. So when they have a cyber incident, I want to make sure they're getting the resources that they paid for when they paid their premium, and that they're getting the services that they need. Because a big piece of a cyber insurance policy, as we'll talk about today, is the services that you're getting. It's not just a place where you can send all your receipts and get money. It is a resource for you to help you respond in the immediate aftermath of a cyber incident. So you'll see some familiar logos up here. Kansas Board of Regents is one of our clients, so we work with all the KBOR institutions as well as other higher ed institutions across the country. Should have made the Jayhawk a little bigger, but out of respect for our host, I decided to leave it small. As I said, we work very closely with our higher ed institutions, and we really try and be proactive. So we work with them to talk about critical controls that they need to implement. We want to work with them to come up with an incident response plan, give them the tools and resources that they need to be able to avoid a cyber incident, but when, not if, for most of us, when that cyber incident occurs, then be there to help them respond in a timely and efficient manner. So this is just a slide showing all the services that we offer throughout the year to our clients. Okay. So the objectives for our group tabletop today are we're going to learn the key initial steps in responding to a cyber incident. We're going to understand how our cyber insurance policy responds. How many of you know whether or not your institution has cyber insurance? Okay, this is good. This is a good step. All right, we're on our way. Next step is to identify the key roles and the players in an incident. So who's going to be involved in the incident response and what are their respective roles? And then how to avoid the common pitfalls and mistakes that we see, which again happen in that initial triage phase that oftentimes lead to adverse outcomes down the road. And then of course the other objective here is to have an interactive discussion. I guarantee you, as a former lawyer, I can talk for the full 40 minutes, but I'd prefer to have a little bit more of a discussion with you guys and get your thoughts as well. You're the ones in the field doing this. I do not have a technical background, so apologize in advance. I like to say I speak IT, but really more as a translator, so I can tell the insurance companies and the underwriters what they need to know. All right, so we're going to start out with our group tabletop exercise here. I'm going to try and keep it pretty simple, all right? So 7:30 a.m., finals was what, 2 weeks ago for most of you, maybe last week. Last week? All right. So 7:30 a.m. during finals week. You get an alert from your MSSP that they're observing unusual traffic patterns on your network that may be indicators of a cyber attack. Simultaneously, your help desk is getting calls from employees saying, hey, I can't access my email on my phone. I got up, I pulled out my personal device, and I'm not able to access my emails or check my emails. So, here's the alert. All right, this is what we just went over. They also said here that some of those unusual traffic patterns, sorry, this is a duplicate slide, that there's data leaving your network and going to an external IP address. Okay, it's a key fact here. They're seeing some data exfiltration. All right, so pull out your phone. What is your first action? You're the CISO. What are we going to do? Go ahead and scan that. And this should work, maybe. We'll see. Is it working? There we go. All right. Okay. Don't change your answers. It's okay. There's not really a right answer here. All right. So let's talk about first maybe. Keep answering. All right. Who wants to just raise their hand and tell why you picked whatever you picked? Bueller. Go ahead.
I believe the other items should be in that plan.
You believe that the other items, all these items here, should be part of your incident response plan. Okay. Does anybody disagree with that? Well, you might disagree with it if you don't have an incident response plan or you haven't updated it. Go ahead.
Shouldn't those items be part of your response plan?
That's correct. That's ideally what your incident response plan is for. Is it's your playbook. It's going to tell you, okay, what do I do? Now, oftentimes, given that fact pattern, you may say, I don't really know if I'm actually having a cyber incident. You know, this could just be something that the MSSP is seeing. Maybe it's not a big deal. Do I really need to pull out the incident response plan? And the answer is most of the time, yes, you do want to go ahead and pull that incident response plan out and at least start working through those initial steps. After you pull that plan out, what do you think of these other three are going to be probably your next first step or your second step? Go ahead.
Conduct an initial assessment.
Okay. Conduct an initial assessment. And what's the goal of that?
Trying to figure out if there's actually something going on or not, and if we need to continue to work onto it, or if it's just a fluke in the network.
That's right. That's right. So again, just because you activate the incident response plan doesn't mean we go straight to DEFCON 5. We can go ahead and start working this and take a look at conduct the initial assessment and go through our steps in our incident response plan to tell us what level we need to go at. That should be built in to your incident response plan.
I would assume the initial assessment would be part of the response plan, like the first step over there somewhere.
Correct. Okay, so why is it important to have an incident response plan? So here's some data for us. What we see is that over here on your right side is key factors that impact the total cost of a cyber incident, okay? So the ones up at the top here, these are factors that mitigate the cost of a cyber incident. So if you are doing these things, the cyber incident that you have is going to be less severe than if you don't have those things in place. And one of the top of that list is an IR plan and testing. So testing, talking through, running a tabletop within your organization, and then having a decent IR plan that you have actually used and know what the steps are and when to activate it. You'll also notice on this that employee training is the second highest. And that's something I always like to point out is that for cybersecurity controls, we spend a lot of time talking about, nifty, expensive tools, applications, solutions, but one of the biggest factors is employee training and awareness. You get the biggest bang for your buck in terms of cost and ROI, but you also, they're your last line of defense. No matter how good your firewalls are, no matter how good your email filtering is, your employees are your last line of defense, and so it's important to train them. Increasing costs. The bottom, these are things that aggravate the cost. They make your cyber incident more severe. So most of these don't really apply that much to our higher education institutions, but one of the things that's not on this list that we see that make our cyber incidents more severe for our higher education institutions is third-party vendor involvement, a lot of third-party solutions that we're using, and then the other one is distributed network. So you may have a distributed IT environment or distributed IT governance, which makes it more challenging to coordinate when you're doing your incident response. So again, that's why it's important to go ahead and have a good IR plan that incorporates all the organization, all the assets, and then be able to test that plan and run scenarios so you guys know what to do in the event that something occurs. If you don't have a cyber incident plan, here's one for you. Gallagher has one that we've put together. You can scan that, customize it. It's a off-the-shelf one that then you can customize to your own solution. But that is one here that we have built. Breach Plan Connect is one of our partners, and not only can you have an IR plan here, but they also have, it's a SaaS solution, so you can store your incident response plan, your cyber insurance policy, your other critical documents in that third-party solution. So if you do have a massive cyber incident, you can't access anything on your own computers, you have an out-of-band portal where you have those critical documents stored. And whether it's this solution, there's a lot of other providers out there that offer this out-of-band solution. Sometimes they're included in your cyber insurance carrier's offerings, but definitely something you want to take advantage of, because the last thing you want to do is have everything locked down and not even be able to access your IR plan or those critical contact information that you need. Okay, any questions? All right, scenario update. We've gone through an hour here. You've activated your IR plan and you've held a triage call with your MSSP. Some red screens have started to appear on employees' computers when they try and turn them on in their offices. And employees have noticed cosmetic changes to the website, including in a banner that directs users to an unrelated third-party website. Now, your MSSP and your internal SOC both still have visibility into most systems, so they are still able to have, we're still getting information out of our network, so we're not completely locked out at this point. So, this is what it looks like when you get it's not the blue screen of death anymore, it's the red crypto demand. And this is what comes up on those computer screens saying that your files have been encrypted and or stolen. In most cases, what we see for our sophisticated ransomware attacks today is they're two-pronged attacks. The first prong is they're going to lock down your network. That was the original method that they used, is they would just lock down your network, and then in order to decrypt it, you had to pay them the ransom. Well, as victims got more sophisticated, we now have backups in place so we can restore from those backups. It makes us less likely to pay. So the second prong of the attack is that they also exfiltrate your data. So then not only are they holding your data ransom and threatening to post it on the dark web, but they're also locking down your system. So it's that two-prong attack that we see for most of our common ransomware variants today. An important point to note, though, from a privacy perspective, in most cases, your privacy obligations are going to be, I know there's some other privacy sessions here today, but in most cases, your privacy obligations are going to be triggered just from the fact that the threat actor took that data. So you're still going to have to do your privacy notifications to your employees, your students, the public, those sorts of things, even if you ended up paying that ransom and you avoided having it posted on the dark web. But you would theoretically avoid having it posted on the dark web. So we do have some ransomware facts here for you today. Higher education is about 11 to 15% of all of targets, so they are widely targeted industry. As you can see here, there are some specific facts about higher education. The average or initial ransom demand is $1 million, approximately. The ransom paid is $166,000. Why the difference? Well, there are service providers out there who, if you are the victim of a ransomware incident, they will come in and help you negotiate that ransom with the threat actor. And they keep data on all the ransomware gangs, so they will know whether or not they are honorable thieves, whether or not if you pay them you're going to get your data back, whether or not they are willing to negotiate the ransomware payment, and then do that on your behalf. So what we typically see is 20% is usually 20 to 30%, depending on the ransomware gang. 30 cents on the dollar is kind of average for what you're typically able to negotiate a ransomware demand down to. One other thing, though, that's important to note is when we have a cyber ransomware incident, even if, as an organization, you say, as a matter of public policy, we're not going to pay a ransom, absolutely not, no way. There are still costs, significant costs, associated with the response to a cyber incident. Those costs are oftentimes much more than any ransomware payment that's made. If you look at the Change Healthcare situation, cyber incident that's gone on, United Healthcare announced in their SEC filings that they'd spent over $700 million on their initial incident response for the Change Healthcare ransomware attack. The Bitcoin, or the ransom that they paid was about $22 million. So that just gives you a sense of how much more severe these are just from a response standpoint than what the actual payment is. So just because you can pay a $166,000 ransom doesn't mean that's all the incident is going to cost you. We see forensic investigation costs skyrocketing. The demand for those services is very high. The pool is very small, so they know that they can charge a lot of money, and they do. Also, with large networks, they're incredibly complicated to go through and do that digital forensics, so there's a lot of time and cost associated with those. And then we also see with the amount of data that's being held by our organizations that the privacy notifications are also expensive. The per record cost has actually come down quite a bit, but you still have all the regulatory compliance, and the call centers, and the credit monitoring, and all those sorts of things associated with it. So even though a per record privacy notification is not nearly as expensive as it was 5 or 10 years ago, there's still a lot of associated costs with a privacy incident that it impacts a large amount of student or employee data. Any questions about ransomware before we keep moving? Go ahead.
Brother-in-law recently went to a conference with Chris Krebs as one of the speakers. And one of the discussions that was brought up was about education, about educating your users versus the importance of preventing access. His logic was that if your organization can be owned by someone clicking a link in an email, you've got bigger problems to deal with. Is there more of a push over towards that, or is it kind of an approach from both sides that you think is the best approach?
So let me see if I can answer your question. I think what you're saying is, should you try and avoid a ransomware incident in the first place by protecting your employees? Is that what you're saying?
Is there kind of, as far as like a cost-benefit analysis or anything like that, should it just be that simple that even if you did have an employee that was affected or anything like that, it should be isolated to that incident with nothing? Or should you focus more on educating your employees and put the effort there?
Got it.
That's
Yeah.
kind of where I came from.
Got it. Yeah. No, I understand what you're saying. So the question is basically, if you didn't hear it, is it better to assume that you're going to have employees click on links do those sorts of things and try and isolate and contain that? Or is it better to really focus on not having them click in the first place? I do think it's a both. So that's why EDR is so important, is having that endpoint detection and response deployed on your system. So if you do have a compromised endpoint, it's not spreading. Again, most of the focus from those sorts of providers is it's not if, but it's when you're going to have a compromised endpoint. So how do we manage that and make sure that that doesn't spread across your organization? But it is still important and much cheaper to just try and train your employees to get them to not click on those links. Although the sophistication of phishing emails, in part driven by AI, is through the roof. And the volume of phishing emails, I think it's 3 billion a day or something, go out. I mean, it's just an insane amount of emails. So your filters are going to catch a lot of that. You know, you're going to be filtering things from Russia, from Eastern Europe, from China. But there is just a lot that's still going to end up in their inbox, and they are that last line of defense. And what we see is most cyber incidents, whether it be a business email compromise or a ransomware incident, phishing is still the number one threat vector.
I've heard somewhere like 90%. Is it still around that?
I wouldn't say it's 90. Software vulnerability is really climbing up in the last 12 months. I'd say it's about like 40 to 60%. Go ahead.
So we have kind of numbers here where we can take a look at it and say, yeah, $166,330 seems to be really high. But depending on the organization, if you show that to a CFO, they can say, oh yeah, we got that, fine.
Yep.
So how would you have the conversation with leadership in describing the costs of treating it and recovering or paying the ransom? Are there any hidden costs either way that you've seen or encountered?
Yes, so that's a great question, and we're not going to have time to do one more step in the tabletop, which is, okay, let's have a discussion about should we pay or not, but it's a great discussion to have. And it oftentimes depends on a number of factors. How severe is the incident? Can you recover? What is the business impact of you continuing to be out, and how long will it take you to restore your systems? Now, for higher education, it's not quite as transactional as it is for a private company. For a private company, they're going to say, okay, I'm losing X dollars an hour because I can't do e-commerce. The demand is Y. It's a business decision. I'm going to pay the demand, and we're going to get back up and running. But for higher education institutions, for public, especially public entities, it's a much more complicated discussion because you have that public policy aspect. There are some pitfalls to paying a ransom. Number one, you can be subject to additional exploitation if you pay. So they do oftentimes attack again. And number two, you can end up in a situation where you pay the wrong person. That's what happened in the Change Healthcare incident. They paid $22 million to, I think, the ransomware for hire gang who actually coded it. But the people who were holding the exfiltrated data, they said, hey, I didn't get paid, so I'm not giving you back your data. So, you know, it's definitely a delicate decision, and it's always made on a case-by-case basis. That's why we recommend that organizations don't, as a public policy, make a statement and say, we're not going to pay a ransom, or we will entertain ransomware payments.
Also, there's a lot of value in just starting the negotiation to just kind of draw, you know.
Absolutely.
Make the whole process take longer so you can get more information or work on your response.
That is a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. Even when you don't have any intent to pay, we always recommend you go ahead and at least engage in that process because it buys you time before they post things on the dark web. And you know, the negotiators will come in, they'll ask for proof of life, try and figure out exactly what they had because you're also trying to figure out what you think they took, but it's also helpful to see what they're saying they took to try and make those two align. Another comment I think I saw, another hand? No? Okay. Here's some additional facts. Ransomware payments by quarter have gone up. This is a different service, so the number's higher here. Average ransomware payment based on this by KBOR, and they're the actual negotiators, is $380,000. As you can see here on the bottom left side, that blue and red chart, that shows the payment over time. So as you can see early on when the ransomware epidemic began during the pandemic, many more organizations were paying because they didn't have backups. They didn't really have any other option. As backups have gotten better, as we've gotten better about protecting those backups from the ransomware threat actor, the rate of payment has gone down. And I would say on average, higher education is even lower than this average rate of payment, which is about 20%. Couple more stats on ransomware. Here's a map showing all of the ransomware attacks on educational institutions from 2018 to 2023. The bigger the dot, the more students were impacted. And as you can see on the map on the right side, the cost of those ransomware attacks is higher in some states than other. A lot of that's going to be driven by your both the volume that they've had, but also what the state privacy laws are. So that's why California and New York are so bleeding red here on the chart, is because they have the most restrictive and most onerous privacy regulations that organizations have to comply with. All right, so this has been our whole lead up. So if you recall, we've kind of figured out, okay, I think we're under ransomware attack here. We've had our initial triage call with our MSSP. Things are not good. So what is our next step? So as you answer this, I'm going to kind of give you a little color here. So contact incident response forensics firm. Hey, I know Kroll, or we have a contract with CrowdStrike, so I'm going to call them up, get them involved. Incident response forensics firm, that's the one I just said. Public statement, okay, we're a couple hours into this now. It's likely employees are starting to realize something bad is going on. It's finals week. What are the students going to be doing? Do we need to issue a public statement? Law enforcement, okay, well, if we're under attack by a threat actor, should we call law enforcement? Who should we call? Should we call, I don't know, University Police? Should we call the FBI? Who should we call? And then the other one here is called a cyber insurance carrier. All right, so who wants to speak up and say why they chose the answer they did? Go for it.
I chose to contact your cyber insurance carrier.
Okay.
Because I know for a fact that ours will help us with the rest of that.
Okay. Good. That's a good answer. So here are all the parties that could potentially be involved in your cyber incident response. Okay, you've got your own staff. You want to get legal involved right away. If it's really bad, you may engage your emergency operations center. You've got leadership to talk to. Okay, you've got existing vendors. You may have your MSSP. You may have an external SOC, your MDR provider. You've got a lot of external existing vendors as well. Law enforcement, okay. I'm not sure how great, Manhattan PD's great, but I'm not sure that they would be able to help us on a ransomware incident. So, we've got state resources, FBI, CISA, Secret Service also does a lot with major ransomware incidents. And then you have your cyber insurance carrier. Of course, you have your broker. I'd like to be involved, so give me a call. But all of these cyber insurance, go ahead.
I was going to say a comment based off of some feedback from the FBI at their most recent conference was involving local police is good, even though they may not have the resources. Federal agencies like to work starting at the lowest level of jurisdiction and work their way up, and so basically augmenting from the bottom up.
That's a great point. That is a great point. So what we typically see is when we do engage, it's usually the FBI. So most of the FBI field offices now have embedded cyber forensics teams on them. So I don't know if Kansas City is the closest one, but there's a cyber team in Kansas City, and they would coordinate with whatever your local law enforcement is to assist you in that response. But most of the cyber insurance carriers, in fact, all of them, maintain a stable of approved incident response providers. And when you use one of these incident response providers, you're getting the benefit of probably a 50% reduction off of the cost of those services if you were to go out and try and procure them yourself for your organization. It's because the volume of business that the cyber insurance carriers do, they're able to push those rates down, and they're able to drive really good prices on your behalf, so those services are much cheaper. So the things that they're going to be able to do is that privacy coach, okay? Privacy coach, breach coach, incident response attorney, whatever you want to call them. It's generally a law firm. Okay, most of them have a 24/7 incident response hotline. So you'll have a number you can call 24/7. The response times range from 7 to 15 minutes. I mean, this is all these people do. And some poor associate has to call on the weekends to make sure that somebody's there to answer that phone, okay? And so those services are really important because when you bring in that privacy counsel, they're going to basically be your quarterback for your incident response. They're going to help you engage your forensics team, your PR team. They're going to contact law enforcement on your behalf. And since they work with law enforcement and regulators all day, every day, they're going to know exactly who to call and whose desk this needs to get to. You're also going to be able to get information from them about what steps you should take immediately. Is this a ransomware strain that they're seeing in other situations? What do they know about this threat actor? Can they identify them just based on, some of the key indicators you already have? And then they're going to help advise you from a privacy perspective what you need to do and what steps you need to start taking. So here's if you're KBOR insured, this is your panel. So you can utilize any of these folks on this panel here. Most of these vendors work with other organizations or other insurance carriers. So these folks are well known in the industry. An important thing too is if you go and use someone that's off panel, meaning somebody that is not approved by the insurance carrier, sometimes those costs are not recoverable. And I've seen, a forensics firm come in or an MSSP come in and spend $100,000 with a university, and then when we go to the insurance carrier, they say, hey, they're not on the list. Sorry. And those are very awkward conversations to have. One question we get asked is, should I bring in an external third party? They don't know my network. They don't know my system. Should I continue to work with my existing partners? It's a discussion point. Sometimes there is a lot of benefits to continuing to do that initial triage with your existing providers, okay? But as soon as you move into like the forensics phase, where have they gone? What have they done? You're probably going to want to engage a third party to come in with a fresh set of eyes. They're going to either plug into your existing solutions or they're going to deploy a new solution over the top of your existing network to try and identify what's going on. I'm going to move forward a little quicker here. Any questions about the incident response and calling the privacy or calling your cyber insurance carrier? All right. Okay. Scenario update. It's 11:30 now. You're having quite a morning. All right. We've had a scoping call with Privacy Council and Digital Forensics. They're coming in. They're deploying a new EDR solution. You found out that large portions of your network are encrypted. All right. So you're losing access to those sections. Your MSSP has said, hey, we know that the HR platform's down. We know accounting's down. Don't have any visibility into those, expecting that has been exfiltrated there. Your online learning platform, though, is still up. And as far as you know, your cloud backups, which are, of course, immutable and protected by separate credentials because you've done the right thing, haven't been impacted as far as we know. And your website's down. Okay? So what are you going to do? What are we going to do? It's decision time here. Keep in mind, it's finals week. And the students need access to that online platform so they can complete their finals. All right, so what are some of the pros? What are some of the benefits of voluntary shutdown of the network? What would we accomplish if we did that?
So voluntary shutdown, if you take down your entire network, if they're in other systems that you haven't detected yet, you have the possibility of dislodging them or stopping them from taking actions on objectives.
Okay.
If you just triage things that you know about, then there's a possibility that they're moving around on your network and you can't see them, and that even though you may throw them off of those particular systems, they may just continue to hit you elsewhere in your network.
Okay. But if we take the network down, we're canceling finals. That's going to be in the news. That's not great. It's going to be in the news. All right, so who's saying we keep triaging? Who thinks we should triage? Anybody want to say why? Go ahead.
I guess what I would look at is, okay, we know we've got HR is encrypted, something else is encrypted, but what is still up and what risk environment does those services face? So I might want to look at what is still online, how bad is that, how secure are those systems?
Is it segmented?
Right, are they segmented, is appropriate MFA in place, other things like that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So for me on the triage, it's take out that middle word. I'm not triaging what I already know might be impacted. I'm triaging everything else.
Okay,
So you fell and broke your collarbone. Well, did you hit your head?
possibly.
You know?
Yeah. We're not just going to focus on monitoring the things we know that are impacted. We need to keep our eyes on the things that aren't to make sure they don't go down as well. Question up here?
Yeah, I would say one thing, speaking from experience, if you just start taking everything down, you start to limit your ability to respond.
That's true.
We ran into that, all of a sudden your firewall management is down and you can't respond to certain things.
Yeah, because once you take it off, you lose visibility too, so you don't know what's going on in the network, and it makes it much harder to do those forensics if the systems are completely offline.
The other thing that I was taught a billion years ago, if you take your network offline, you can't record what's happening.
Okay, logging, you don't have any, you're going to lose your logs. Well, you're not going to lose the logs you already have, but you're going to lose the ability to log ongoing. Okay, good.
You won't be able to sit in that way to see what's really going on.
That's right.
Shut everything down.
That's right. Has anybody seen Silicon Valley, the TV show? I always think of this scene where there's a gentleman and somebody attacks his personal phone, and he's the CEO, and he starts screaming, "Turn off the power to the building, unplug the building." That's his solution to a very small cyber incident. But that's kind of the part that I start to think of as well. So there's no right answer to this one. I don't have the right answer either. But this is the exact conversation that you want to have with your stakeholders during your tabletop exercise, and it's a conversation that's going to be happening on all of these key decision points. What do we do? What statements do we make to our employees and to our students? Do we pay a ransom? What systems do we bring back online? And having those conversations and working through them in a tabletop exercise gives you the critical thinking abilities to respond in the event of a cyber incident. Again, it's not about what's the right and wrong answer. It's how do we discuss them and what factors are we looking at to make that determination that's a specific best solution for us on the day. All right, I think we are about out of time. I think this will be available, I don't know, hopefully this will be available. So my team, we put together critical cybersecurity controls from an underwriting perspective. These will be available in the PowerPoint. It's really a good map. It aligns closely to those mitigating and aggravating controls. It also is really what the underwriters are looking for. So this is, directly impacted by the claims that they're seeing. Oftentimes, security standards like NIST and other things are the evolution of what the losses are, right out of the gate. So we get the raw data right on the front end. We're trying to get people up to speed, and then years down the road is kind of when NIST and other security standards come in and incorporate some of this. So we have these tools here as well. Any other questions? Go ahead.
I want to throw this one out. Some state legislatures have passed a law stating public
That's correct.
Do you believe that has any impact, good or bad?
I don't believe it has any impact, because I don't think the ransomware gang in Russia says, uh-oh, this domain's tied to Florida public entity, so I can't get any money from them. I don't think they're I don't think they're up on state laws in the United States.
I don't think they care.
Huh?
I don't think they care.
No, I don't think they care either.
Any of these wrong decisions, like if we were to pick the wrong one through there, would that affect recovery as far as an insurance standpoint?
So, great question. If you do something wrong in these steps, can it impact the insurance? The two most important things are engaging that privacy counsel, because when you start doing things, you start making public statements, you start working with your forensics team, you want all that protected by attorney-client privilege, okay? And if a lawyer's not involved, it's not protected by attorney-client privilege. So if somebody files an open records request, or if you're in litigation and they get that information, it's going to be discoverable, whereas if you're using an attorney, it's typically going to be more protected. And then the second thing is using off-panel providers. That's where we see people run afoul and end up having to pay for things out of pocket that would otherwise have been covered had they used the insurance, had the insurance companies approved providers. So, great question. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you all for participating today. I appreciate it. I'll be around for a little while. Let me know if you have any other questions.